Hello and welcome to all of you. It doesn't matter if you're just a baby axolotl that graduated from primary school trying to study ahead, or a super senior secondary school student that's sitting for their O-level soon. Because Axie the Axolotl is here to teach you all of the Sec 1 topics, along with memes, dreams, and everything else in between. So welcome to the one-stop video series of the ultimate secondary school math guide. Putting a negative sign in front of a number is just like flipping a light switch. Let's say we have the number 5, and since it's positive, it represents the light being on. If we put a negative sign in front of the 5, it's just like flipping the light switch and turning it off. If we put another negative sign in front of the negative 5, it's kind of like flipping the light switch back on again, and the two negative signs sort of cancel each other out, and it becomes positive. Many times in math, they want you to round off your answer to 3 significant figures, which is kind of like taking the first 3 numbers of something, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. Okay, let's try to round off to 3 significant figures, and I call this the cover-up and peak method. What we're gonna do is we're gonna focus on the first 3 digits and cover up the rest like this. Then we're gonna take a peek at the next digit, which is 9. If this number is 5 or greater, that means we have to round up. If not, we can just leave it as it is. So 823 will become 824. The last step is to add in zeros to the back of 824 so that it has the same number of digits as 82395. So let's add in 2 zeros to the back of 824 to get the final answer of 82400. Okay, the next variation is the 0.00 something kind. So these zeros in front are actually not counted as significant figures. So let's write out the zeros in our answer first. Again, we take the first 3 digits, which is 485, and we take a peek at the next digit, which is 2. Since this number is less than 5, we don't need to round it up, so we can leave it as 0.00485 as our final answer. Let's try out this question where they want you to round off each of these individual numbers to one significant figure to estimate the final value. For 60145, using the same method, we take a look at the first number, we take a peek at the next number, and since it's a 0, we don't have to round up. We fill in the zeros to get the answer of 60,000. So let's repeat this process for all the other numbers like this, and you can get the final answer of 100. Have you heard about primes?
The fastest growing sports drink in history.
No, Logan, you're not getting a sponsored segment in my video. So, a prime number is basically a number that can't be nicely divided by anything other than 1 and itself. Some of the prime numbers are 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and so on. And take note that 1 is not a prime number. These 5 numbers are going to be our best friends for this topic here. The whole idea of prime factorization is to split up a number. For example, 280 into the prime numbers using something what I call the going down the ladder method. So let's start off with 280, and we're going to try to find a number from our prime numbers list that we can divide it nicely by. Since 280 is an even number, let's try dividing it by 2 to get 140. And we can take 140 divided by 2 again to get 70. And then it will repeat this process and divide the number until it becomes 1. If we look to the left of our ladder method, we can finally get our prime factorization of 280 equals to 2 times 2 times 2 times 5 times 7. Now, since we have 2 multiplied by itself 3 times, we can write the final answer as 280 equals to 2 cubed times 5 times 7. If you are really insecure, you can even press this in your calculator to make sure you get 280 back. Okay, let's imagine the question gives us another number. 550 is equals to 2 times 5 squared times 11, and they want us to find the highest common factor and the lowest common multiple for these two numbers. Imagine you're at like a dinner table or a party. The HCF is like the nice guy that never takes more than needed. So between the 2 cubed and the 2, he'll always choose the one with the lesser power, so he takes 2. So we apply the same logic by comparing the 5s. Now we run into a slight problem. 280 has a 7 and 550 has an 11 over here. In this case, since he's such a nice guy, because they don't share each other's number, the HCF doesn't take anything from them. So the final answer for the HCF is just equals to 2 times 5 equals to 10. On the other hand, the LCM is just like the greedy, inconsiderate dude that seems to eat and take everything from the dinner table. So comparing the 2's, he takes the one with the highest power, which is 2 cubed. And he also takes 5 square when comparing the 5's. Now when it comes to different terms, he just doesn't care, he just takes them all. So he takes 7 and he takes the 11 as well. So the LCM is equal to 2 cubed times 5 square times 7 times 11, which is equal to 15400. Whenever you see questions like this come out about finding some constant, right, I'm gonna teach you how to use my Jenga method of stacking and removing blocks. We refer to the prime factorization of 280 to draw out our Jenga diagram. Since it's 2 to the power of 3, the Jenga stack of the number 2's is 3 blocks tall. And for 5 and 7, they are both 1 block tall each. Since the question asks for a perfect square, which means power 2, but the power can also be multiples of 2, like 2, 4, 6, and so on. Because it's 280 times k, we can only stack blocks on top of it, and our goal is to make every stack either 2 or 4 or 6 blocks high. So for the stack of 2's, by putting another block of 2 there, it's now 4 blocks tall. And for the number 5 and 7 stacks, by adding just 1 block to each of them, they are both now 2 blocks tall. After all of that, the value of k is just basically all the new blocks that we added. So the value of k is equal to 2 times 5 times 7, which is equal to 70. Now let's try something a little more difficult. The first step is to prime factorize 360, which gives us 2 cubed times 3 squared times 5. Because p and q are prime numbers, each of them are just like adding and removing one block. Since it's 360 times p divided by q, p is basically adding one block and q is basically removing one block. The question asks for a perfect cube, so each stack needs to be like 3, 6, 9 and so on high. If we look at our current stack, the number 2 is already 3 blocks tall, so we don't have to change anything there. Now the number 3 is only 2 blocks tall, so we need to add another block to the stack to make it 3 blocks tall. Now we know that p is equal to 3 because it refers to this block over here. To solve for q, since we can only remove one block, let's remove this number 5 block, which removes this stack entirely. So we know that q is equals to 5. If you're still feeling a little insecure about your answer, you can always sub in the values of p and q into the original equation, which will give you 216. If we try taking the cube root of 216, you can see that we get a nice number, so we know that we're good. The whole idea of simplifying is to combine the same terms together. So for this question, you can see that the equation is made up of some a terms and some b terms. So let's shift all the a terms together to the left to get 3a minus 2a, and shift all the b terms to the right to get plus 4b plus 5b. Now let's combine them together. So this will give me 1a, and this will give me 9b, and this is our final answer. You know how at the start of the class, the teacher always has to distribute out worksheets to every student? So that's basically how expanding works. In this question, we want to distribute this number 2 out to the 3x and the negative 4. So let's multiply 2 and 3x together, which will give us 6x. And we can do the same, 2 multiplied by negative 4, which will give us minus 8. Okay, let's try out something similar. For this question, we multiply negative 6x and negative 5x. So remember that two negatives multiplied together gives us a positive. So it's positive 30x squared. And let's multiply the second term of negative 6x and 3y together to get negative 18xy. Whenever you want to combine two fractions together, the goal is to always make the denominator the same thing. So for this question, since 3 and 4 have a common multiple of 12, let's try to turn both of them into 12. For the fraction on the left, if we multiply 3 to the top and the bottom, we can get 12. But remember, whatever you multiply to the top, you must also multiply it to the bottom. And for the other fraction, we multiply by 4 to the top and the bottom, and let's expand out both of the numerators, and we are ready to combine the fractions. When combining, remember that this negative sign here affects both this 8x and the 20 term. So we have to put a bracket like this. So now let's expand the negative to both of these terms and simplify our numerator. And we can get the final answer of x minus 32 divided by 12. Factorizing is basically like your teacher collecting back that one homework assignment from everyone. The goal of factorization is to find out what common term can we take out from a few things. We can see that these two terms here have a common factor of 5 and a common factor of x. So we can split it up into 5x times 5y over here and 5x times 8z over here. Since they both have 5x, we can take them out and put them in front over here. Then we can just write whatever that's left, which is 5y minus 8z, inside these brackets. You can notice that factorization is just the opposite of expansion, because if I expand this out, I get back the original equation. Okay, now let's try out a more difficult example. This type of question is a little bit tricky because we don't really know what to factorize here. But do you notice that this 3a minus 2c here looks very similar to the 2c minus 3a? Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. Since this doesn't have a bracket, we will try to make it look like 3a minus 2c. So let's try to factorize out the negative 1 from these two terms to get negative 2c plus 3a, which we can rewrite to 3a minus 2c. Now that these two terms are the same, let's factorize both of these 3a minus 2c's out of these two terms, and whatever that's left inside of the bracket is 5q minus 1. The reason why it's minus 1 is because there's kind of like an invisible 1 in front of this bracket, and that's our final factorization. Now, for solving, I'm going to teach you two ways to do it. One is the legit textbook method, and the other is kind of like my cheat method that I've been using since I was a small axolotl. To solve for x, because it's stuck with the x plus 3 over here, so we're going to do minus 3 on both sides. So this plus 3 and the minus 3 here will cancel each other off, and we get x equals to 5 minus 3, which gives us 2. So for my cheat method, we kind of have to move this 3 to the other side of the equal sign. But very importantly, we have to flip the sign, so it becomes 5 minus 3, which is equals to 2. Next, when the x is at the top of the fraction and we kind of want to get rid of this 4 at the bottom, we multiply 4 on both sides, and the 4 and the 4 here will cancel out, and the other side is 7 times 4, which gives us 28. So for my cheat method, anytime there is something at the bottom of the fraction, we can kind of move it over to the other side and it becomes a multiply. So 4 times 7 also gives us 28. In this question, you can see that the x is stuck at the bottom. Because we don't want to see fractions anymore, we multiply both sides by x minus 2. So these two things will cancel out and the right side will become 3 times x minus 2. After expanding this and rearranging, we get 3x equals to 12, and let's divide both sides by 3 to get the final answer of x is equals to 4. Now for my cheat method. Okay, this one takes a little bit of imagination. So imagine that this x minus 2 is wearing a hat that says 6. Now he transfers that hat over to his friend 3 on the other side. So the fraction on the left side is gone. And we get x minus 2 equals to 6 divided by 3, which is 2. Now we shift the negative 2 over to become plus 2, and we get the final answer of x is equals to 4. I'm going to teach you about this cross-multiply trick, and you can use it when you see the form of one fraction equals to another fraction without anything else. Now it kind of works like an X shape. So on this diagonal, this 2 and this x plus 1 are multiplied together, and let's put them here and an equal sign. X minus 1 and 3 are also multiplied together, so let's put them on the right side. After expanding the terms and shifting all the x to one side and all the numbers to the other side, we get our final answer of x is equals to 5. Now imagine you traveled to the US and went up to a money exchanger to exchange 50 Singapore dollars and the guy gave you 36.67 US dollars. Now you want to check that you didn't get scammed, so you need to check the SGD to USD exchange rate. To calculate the exchange rate, we always aim for the ratio of the 1 is to something form. So from 50 to get to 1, we divide it by 50, and we also need to divide the right side by 50. So 36.67 divided by 50 will give us an exchange rate of 1 SGD to 0.7334 USD, and we leave it to 4 significant figures. Now using this exchange rate that we calculated, now we want to convert our USD into the most valuable currency in the world. Bitcoin? Ethereum? Nope. I'm talking about Robux. The exchange rate from the USD to Robux is 0.0125 USD is equals to 1 Robux. and the question asks us to calculate the exchange rate of SGD to Robux. Now, the first thing to notice when we take a look at these two exchange rates is that the currency in common is USD. Since USD is in common, our goal is to make the USD in both ratios equals to 1. For this ratio, let's divide both sides by 0.7334 because any number divided by itself will give you 1. And we get 1.364 is to 1. Now let's do the same for the other ratio, dividing both sides by 0.0125 and it gives us 1 is to 80. Since the USD in both of these ratios is equal to 1, we can finally compare SGD to Robux and it gives us 1.364 SGD is equal to 80 Robux. Our last step is to make it into the 1 is to something form. So let's divide both sides by 1.364 to get our final answer of 1 SGD is equals to 58.65 Robux. Okay, let's say Matt can eat 17 hot dogs in 5 minutes and Zermatt can eat 14 hot dogs in 4 minutes. How long does it take both of them to finish 100 hot dogs? Now, the first step is to find out their individual hot dog eating rate. What we want to find out is how many hot dogs can they eat in 1 minute. So Matt's eating rate is 17 hot dogs divided by 5 minutes, which is 3.4 hot dogs a minute. For Zermatt, 14 divided by 4 gives us 3.5 hot dogs per minute. So since they are working together, we can actually add up the two rates to get 6.9 hot dogs per minute. Now the question wants us to find 100 hot dogs, so we kind of have to draw this rate triangle thing. The rate always goes to the bottom left hand corner, and now let's take a look at the units. Since it's hot dogs per minute, hot dogs goes to the top and minutes goes to the bottom. Because the question wants us to find how long it takes in minutes, using the triangle, it's equal to the number of hot dogs divided by the rate. So let's put in the values. 100 hot dogs divided by 6.9 will give us the answer of 14.5 minutes. Let's try to convert 72 kilometers per hour into meters per second. Since it's 72 kilometers, we multiply by 1000 to get 72,000 meters. Now for the 1 hour, we ask ourselves, how many seconds are there in 1 hour? So we know that 1 hour has 60 minutes, and 1 minute there's 60 seconds. So the denominator becomes 60 times 60, so 72,000 divided by 3,600 gives us the final answer of 20 meters per second. Using the same idea of the rate triangle just now, distance speed time also has a triangle like this, which I'm sure that you're all familiar with. Now, this topic has a very underrated formula, which is that the average speed for any journey is the total distance divided by the total time. And take note, for the total time, we need to add up all the time values, including when the car or whatever object is also resting. Let's try out this question where they ask you to find the average speed from A to C. I know many students are tempted to just take the average of 60 and 70, but that's wrong. We have to use the formula to find the total distance and the total time first. To calculate the distance from A to B, we take the speed of this portion, which is 60, times the time taken, which is 2, and it gives us 120. We do the same with BC to get 210. So the total distance is 120 plus 210, which is equal to 330 kilometers. And the total time is 2 hours plus 3 hours, which gives us 5 hours. Finally, the average speed is just 330 kilometers divided by 5 hours to get the final answer of 66 kilometers per hour. When I used to be a no-life basement dweller of an axolotl playing TF2 and Dota all day, I would always wait for the Steam Summer Sale where games would have huge discounts. Now imagine that the game is originally $20 and because of the sale, it becomes $15 and we want to find the percentage reduction. Okay, I know this looks a little bit crazy, but here's the percentage change formula. The original price is $20 and the final price is $15. So since it's final minus original over original, it's 15 minus 20 over 20 multiplied by 100%. An important thing is that you don't press this percentage sign in your calculator when doing this, and it will give you an answer of negative 25%. And since the percentage change is minus 25%, the percentage reduction is just 25%. For this question, since A is 15% less than B, we try to let the price of B equal to X number of dollars. Since a is 15% less, 100 minus 15% gives us 85% of x. And we can write it as a is equals to 0.85x dollars. Because a plus b is $74, we can put in the values and it becomes x plus 0.85x is equals to 74. So solving for x, we get the value of x is equal to $40. And that's the price of B. An installment plan is basically when you're too broke to buy something, but you still want to buy it anyways. So the company that sells it to you goes like, you can just pay me 20% of the cost first, and then for the rest you can pay back in like 12 months. And then they pray very hard that you don't go bankrupt. So imagine you want to buy a TV that costs $1,000 under an installment plan. The down payment is $200, which you have to pay upfront, and the rest is paid in 8 equal monthly installments with an interest of 6% per annum, which means per year. So we take $1,000 minus $200, which gives us $800. So this $800 is what we need to pay in 8 chunks with something called interest, which is kind of like the extra that you need to pay the company. The formula to calculate this interest is equals to PRT. So P is the amount that you have to pay off. In this case, it is $800. R is the rate, which is 6% per year. So let's put that inside. Okay, the T value here is talking about the time frame, and this is where it gets a little bit tricky. Since the rate is per year, the time frame needs to be in terms of years also. So let's convert this 8 months into years, which is 2/3 years. Now we put that into our formula and we can get the interest of $32. Now to find the installment each month, we can take the $800 plus the $32 divided by 8 months to get $104 per month. Okay, bonus trick question round. I want you to imagine that you're a Wall Street stocks trader. So on day 1, you make a loss of 10%, but on day 2, you make a profit of 10%. So the question is, are you stonks or not stonks? To solve this question, let's imagine you start trading with $100. On day 1, you lose 10%, so we do $100 multiplied by 90%, so we are left with $90. So on day 2, we make a profit of 10%, so we do $90 times 110%, and what do we get? We get $99. Wait, didn't we start with $100? As you can see, we actually lost $1, so the final answer is not stonks. Have you ever wondered what a day in the life of a talking axolotl is like? Man, I'm just chilling at the bottom of the fish tank, living my best life. No homework assignments, no responsibilities, unlike all you humans. Since I'm such a hardworking axolotl that's teaching you math all day, why not sponsor me some food by hitting the like and subscribe button? If I end up starving to death, I hope that all of you fail your math exams. Let's try to find the general formula for a number pattern that goes like 11, 13, 15, 17, and so on. So this 11 here represents the first term, so we call it n is equals to 1. And this is n equals to 2, and so on. There's just 2 things that you need to take note of. So the first is the first term of the sequence, which is 11 over here. And the next thing is the common difference, which is how you get from one number to the next. So that is positive 2. So to calculate the general formula Tn, it is equals to the first term plus the common difference multiplied by n minus 1. So the first term is 11 plus positive 2 times n minus 1. So we can expand this and we get our final answer of 9 plus 2n. We can actually check if we are correct by substituting n is equals to 1 and seeing we actually get back the first term, which is 11. And yes, we do. Sometimes the question asks if, let's say, the number 136 is part of the sequence just now. So the trick here is to equate the general formula Tn is equals to 136, and we kind of try to solve for the value of n. So let's try it out. 9 plus 2n is equals to 136. So after trying to solve for n, we get the value of n is equals to 63.5. We know that this doesn't really work out because there's no such thing as a 63.5 term. So we can write 136 is not part of the sequence since the nth term is not a positive integer. Okay, sometimes the pattern in the number pattern is not super obvious like this example. The first step is to look at the terms at the bottom of the fraction. We can notice that the numbers are like all square numbers. So if we write out n is equals to 1, n is equals to 2, and so on, The answer is just n squared for the bottom. For the top, we can see that it has a common difference of 5, so we can use the method that we used just now. So Tn for the top is the first term, which is 1, plus positive 5 bracket n minus 1, and after expanding it and rearranging the terms, it works out to be 5n minus 4. So the general term for the entire sequence is 5n minus 4 over n squared. Have you ever played these 2D games like Geometry Dash? This topic is all about representing points and lines using the x and y axis. So imagine this is you, and the x-axis is basically like moving left and right. So if I'm standing at x equals to 1, and I take one step forward, I end up at x is equals to 2. The y-axis is just like moving up and down. So right now I'm at y is equals to 0. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna dig straight down, just like in Minecraft, by 3 blocks. So I end up at y is equals to negative 3. The position that we are at can be written in coordinates form in the xy form. So our coordinates right now is 2, negative 3. An equation kind of works like a vending machine, where you put something in and you get something out. So for the equation y is equals to 2x plus 1, let's try to put in x equals to 1. So 2 multiplied by 1 plus 1 will give us y is equals to 3. So what this means is that this equation actually passes through this point where x is equals to 1 and y is equals to 3. Okay, now what if I wanted to draw this graph? In order to draw a straight line, we need to form this table of x and y coordinates for us to plot onto the graph. So let's use 3 points at 3 different x coordinates. X is equals to 1, 2, and 3. We put each of these individual x values into the equation to get the corresponding y values. So if we put x is equals to 1, we get the value of y is equals to 3, and so on. Now we just plot all of these coordinates onto the graph and we draw a straight line through them. Okay, now this is the most important formula that will carry you from Sec 1 all the way to Sec 4. A straight line equation can be written as our golden formula y is equals to mx plus c. If we compare this to just now's formula of y is equals to 2x plus 1, we can kind of see that the m value, the gradient, which is equals to 2. Gradient just means how steep of the slope the line is. Positive gradient means going up, and negative gradient means going down. The c value means the y-intercept, so it's the y value at the point where the line cuts the y-axis, which in this case is 1, so c is equals to 1. Okay, now let's try to reverse the question a little. Imagine they give you a straight line graph passing through these 2 points. How do I calculate the values of m and c just by looking at the graph? Okay, the c value is quite easy because we can just read it here. So at the y value of the y-intercept here is 1, so c is equals to 1. Now for the gradient, there's actually this other formula where the triangle means the change in the y value over the change in the x value. So to get from this point to this point, the x value has to go right by 4 units and the y value has to go up by 8 units. So the change in y is 8 and the change in x is 4. So m is equals to 8 divided by 4, which is equals to 2. Okay, let's try out a more difficult question. If you look closely, do you notice that this question here doesn't really follow the y is equals to mx plus c form? So we have to manipulate a little bit first. So let's shift the 5y to one side and the 2x minus 20 to the other side. Now let's divide the whole equation by 5, and now we finally get our y is equals to mx plus c form. From comparing the two equations, the m value is 2 over 5 and the c value is minus 4. So let's do a rough sketch of this graph first. We label the c is equals to minus 4 here, and since the gradient is positive, that means it's going up, and it should look something like this. The coordinates of the y-intercept is 0, minus 4, since at this point, the x value is 0. Okay, now for the x-intercept. It's where the graph cuts the x-axis, and at this point, the y value is equals to 0. So let's sub y is equals to 0 inside our equation, and we get the value of x is equals to 10. So the coordinates of the x-intercept is 10, 0. Okay, real talk. I think this is probably everyone's most hated topic because of all the angle properties that you have to memorize. Let's first take a look at these two examples over here. You can notice that these 3 angles here add up to 180 degrees because they lie on a straight line. So 2x plus 90 degrees plus x equals to 180 degrees, and the reasoning that we write is adjacent angles on a straight line. For the other example, because these four angles here add up to 360 degrees, so 4x plus 3x plus x plus 72 is equals to 360. And the reason is angles at a point. From here, we can solve for x in both examples. Okay, pretty easy so far. Welcome back to the wonderful world of Sesame Street, boys and girls. Today's segment is the letters of the day. The first letter of the day is the x-shaped angle property, and it can only work when these two lines here are straight. We can see that these two angles here are equal, and these two angles here are also equal, so we call this property vertically opposite angles. For the Z and the F shape, it only works when there are two parallel lines. So for the Z shape, this angle and this angle here are the same, and the property is called alternate angles. For the F shape, we can see that this angle here is the same as this angle here, and the property is called corresponding angles. For any triangle you can think of, the sum of these three angles here always add up to 180 degrees. For an isosceles triangle, because the two sides are equal, this angle and this angle are equal, and for an equilateral triangle, since all three sides are the same, each angle is 60 degrees. Okay, so let's try to put it all together. The first thing is to highlight all the parallel lines in the diagram. So here we can kind of see the Z shape coming out. In order to find x, we have to find this angle because we can use the alternate angles property later on. This angle is just 180 minus 123 equals to 57 degrees, and the angle x is also 57 degrees because of alternate angles. Let's update the diagram now that we found x, and let's look at this triangle over here. Because this is a straight line, this angle is 180 minus 110, which is 70 degrees. And we can find y since the sum of angles in this triangle here adds up to 180. So 180 minus 70 minus 57 gives us the final answer of 53 degrees. There's a few types of four-sided quadrilaterals. The first is the parallelogram, where these two sides are equal and parallel, and the same for these two. For a trapezium, only this and this are parallel. Rhombus is kind of like communism. Everything is the same length and the opposite sides are parallel. And lastly, for a kite, these two are the same length and these two are also the same length. For this question, using the communism property that all four sides are the same in a rhombus, we can kind of see that this becomes an isosceles triangle, so this angle is also 23 degrees. Finally, 180 minus 23 minus 23 gives us x to be 134 degrees. Polygons are basically anything from a triangle onwards. For a triangle, the number of sides is 3 and the sum of angles is 180 degrees. For a square, n is equals to 4 and the sum of angles is 360 degrees. You can kind of start to see a pattern here. So let's try to find the sum of angles in a pentagon. There's actually a formula that connects n to the sum of the angles, where the sum of angles is n minus 2 times 180 degrees. We can see that for the triangle, n is equals to 3, so 3 minus 2 times 180 gives us 180. Each of the angles inside the polygon is called the interior angle, and it's just the sum of angles divided by the number of sides. Now let's try to calculate the interior angle of this pentagon that has 5 sides. The sum of angles is 5 minus 2 times 180, which gives us 540 degrees. To calculate the interior angle, 540 divided by 5 gives us 108 degrees. There's something else called an exterior angle, which is where we take any one of these lines and we extend it, and this here is the exterior angle. So the exterior angle here is 180 minus 108, which is equal to 72. But there's actually another important formula that can be used to calculate the exterior angle, which is exterior angle equals to 360 divided by n. So for this example, since n is equals to 5, 360 divided by 5 can also give us 72. Okay, I know this is a pretty complicated looking question that wants us to find the number of sides for this polygon. If we can find the exterior angle, we can use just now's 360 divided by n formula to find the value of n. Since this here is a pentagon, this angle here is also 108. So we can take 360 minus 108, minus 96 to get 156, which is the interior angle of the polygon here. And using the line extension method just now, the exterior angle is just 180 minus 156, which gives us 24 degrees. So the final step is to use the formula of the exterior angle, which is 360 divided by n, and we can solve for n to be 15 sides. Do you know about the Pokemon called Porygon, which is made out of, you guessed it, polygons? Okay, but there's another type of polygon called an irregular polygon, where the angles are not equal to each other. So this over here is a 5-sided irregular polygon. So the only formula that we can use is the sum of angles for this kind of polygon is n minus 2 times 180 degrees. Okay, I'm sure that all of you know how to use a protractor, so I'm gonna introduce you to this thing with one stabby end and one pencil end called a compass. So let's say this question asks you to construct some kind of triangle here such that this angle is 70 degrees and this length here is 6 cm. For the angle 70 degrees, we can actually use the protractor, mark 70 degrees out and extend out a dotted line. Now we need to draw a line from this point to somewhere on this line, which is exactly 6 cm. So that's where we need to use our compass. Okay, we use a ruler to measure 6 cm between the ends of the compass, and then next you gotta stab your paper on this point here using the sharp end and draw an arc like this using the pencil end. So the point where the arc intersects the dotted line is actually the point Z, and the last step is to finally construct our full triangle. The most important thing for finding area is this thing called the perpendicular height. I think we all know that the area of the triangle is half times base times height, but this height has to be somewhere from the base. So we extend out a line and we draw a line here that touches the top where it's 90 degrees, and this is called the perpendicular height. For the area of the parallelogram, it's just the base times the perpendicular height. And you can imagine this part here gets moved over to form like a rectangle. And finally, for a trapezium, you have to memorize the formula where it's half bracket a plus b times height, where a and b are kind of like the floor and the ceiling of the trapezium, and h is the perpendicular height. Okay, I want you to imagine that we have a disk and a ring. The area of the disk is pi r square, and the ring has a circumference of 2 pi r. But how do we convert the area and the circumference into the 3D world? If we keep stacking these disks, you can see that it kind of forms like a cylinder. And similarly, if we keep stacking these rings, it forms a hollow cylinder. If we stack the disk to a height of h, we can actually derive the volume of the cylinder from the area, and is equals to pi r square times h. It's the same thing with the rings, and since we are stacking the circumference, so the curved surface area of the cylinder is 2 pi r times h. Okay, let's try to use that idea to find the volume and the total surface area of this toilet roll here. The first step is to divide by 2 to the outer and inner diameter to get the radius. So now let's focus on the volume first. I think the most intuitive way to find the volume is by taking the volume of the big cylinder minus the volume of the small cylinder. Okay, but let me teach you another 200 IQ method. So using the idea of stacking from just now, another way is to find the area of this donut over here and multiply it upwards by h units. So the area of the donut is the big circle pi times 6 squared minus the small circle pi times 2 squared. Then we multiply the height by 10 to get the volume of 1005.3 cm cubed. In order to find the surface area, it consists of the curved surface area of the big cylinder, the curved surface area of the small cylinder, and the area of this donut thing at the top and at the bottom. Since the curved surface area is 2 pi r(h), the curved surface area of the big cylinder is 2 pi times 6 times 10. And we do the same for the small cylinder as well. Now, because we already calculated the area of the donut, and the top and the bottom is the same, so we can just do 2 times 100.53. Now, adding up all of these areas together, we can get our final answer of 703.72 cm squared. Now let's try to extend this idea of stacking to prisms. So for this Toblerone chocolate looking prism over here, we can find the area of this triangle and we can kind of stack it out horizontally to get the volume. And similarly with the surface area of these faces, instead of calculating them individually, we can actually take the perimeter of the triangle and just multiply it by the length. So this idea can be applied to any shape with a uniform cross-sectional area, where we calculate the area or the perimeter and we just stack it across. Imagine we go up to the streets and ask people who their favorite YouTuber is, and we give them 3 choices: Dream, MrBeast, and your favorite math axolotl, Wonjon. From the results over here, based on the category and the frequency, we can actually plot something called a bar graph. Bar graphs are good to represent categorical data, since the people can only choose from these 3 choices. Now let me open up my YouTube Studio and check my analytics real quick. From this data, it shows how many subscribers I gain for each day. And as you can see, we can draw something called a line graph to plot this data because it's used to predict trends and data that changes over time, kind of like the stonks meme. Now imagine that YouTube just released some data on how many total views each category of my videos got over the past year. We want to represent this in a pie chart because it's used to represent the percentage of certain categories. To make a pie chart, we need to calculate a new column called the sector angle. The first step is to calculate the total number of views. So we can add up 360 plus 700 plus 100 plus 280 equals to 1440. Now, if we want to calculate the sector angle for, let's say, the lifestyle category, we just take 360 divided by the total 1440 multiplied by 360 degrees because it's a circle. And we get the sector angle of 90 degrees. So let's repeat this for all the different categories, and to double check, you can actually add all of these up to make sure it actually adds to 360 degrees. The last step is to use a protractor to measure the angle and draw out all the categories like this. And that is it for all the Sec 1 topics. I know most of them are pretty easy, but there are a few difficult ones that even some of the Sec 4 students struggle with, like prime factorization and polygons. The rest are mainly the foundation for topics that you will learn in Sec 2, Sec 3, and Sec 4. Even if you are like a genius axolotl like myself, I would still recommend you to watch through the whole video to refresh your memory. As always, these videos take me ages to make, so I hope it helps you get the A1, and thanks for watching. Axolotl out!